So I wanted to continue down the path of what I was talking about yesterday about whining and complaining. And kind of the realization in yesterday's video was there's no benefit, seemingly, there's no benefit to whining or complaining. So it doesn't, there must be something off in the math because I do it, right? Speaking for myself, many of us do, but I do it. Something must be off in the math. And what I concluded may be off is, at least for me, I have some sense of like cosmic justice that's going to come into play. All right, so when something I feel is wrong happens, my boss gives me work to do over the weekend, that's not fair, that's not just, it's out of balance in some way. So somehow that will correct itself. And it's almost as if when I whine and complain, I'm making the case for that. I'm saying it, almost trying to will it into existence, that this can't be. It has to be in balance. So I wanted to use this video to just keep pushing on that and kind of just go through the logical process that I go through when I try and get kind of deep into that rabbit hole of like what's really going on there. So I think naturally I believe there's some truth to that, that I believe that will happen. I think of balance a lot for me. It's something that is one of the biggest triggers or values that I look at. That I talk a lot about authority and issues with authority. I think you could categorize that as things are out of balance. Somebody has too much power, somebody doesn't have enough, and I'm not okay with that. It has to be balanced out. So similar concept here with if something wrong happened, it needs to be righted somehow. And I guess I have the math that's off is that there's an irrational belief that that's actually true, that it will be righted. I run into a little bit of a problem there because in theory, I'm a logical person. That's an illogical thought. I mean, it's not to say it's not true. It's not to say there isn't a God or some spiritual kind of cosmic power that does balance out the universe somehow, right? Perhaps science one day discovers that that's true. I couldn't say. But based on what I know right now, the information that I have, the knowledge I have, and how I do my analysis of it, it seems extremely unlikely. So it would be illogical to act in accordance with it, to act as if there is some cosmic justice that will be served. So I shouldn't be whining, right? Like it's almost as if the calculation still shouldn't hold. Like the flaw is too blatant, and either I correct it or it's not true. It's not really a flaw, right? Perhaps I really believe there is some cosmic justice. I don't want to admit that because it's illogical, but there's some part of me that believes that to be true. Possible. Perhaps I am just that kind of childish in some way at my core still, where that emotional aspect of it, that like I need to get my way, temper tantrum a little bit, that overrides the logic. It almost acts like an emotion, so it acts like a multiplier in the calculation, and it leads me in that direction because it's kind of just raw, almost childish behavior. Possible as well, right? That's the reason I'm coming out on the side of the positive. I think there's some truth to that because one of the thoughts I had today when I was thinking about this topic was perhaps when you whine, when you complain, the source of that, because if I believe there's no benefit to it, right? It doesn't serve any purpose to just whine and complain, assuming there's not a cosmic justice. If there's no benefit to it, if there's no reason to actually go, whine and complain, it doesn't change anything. What is it? Maybe there's another benefit that's underneath it. And what I thought that benefit might be is that it's one that it often is. It's allowing me to hide from an inconvenient truth, right? There's something, and in this case, I would say it's that I probably know what I need to do to resolve the issue. I just don't want to do it. The work it would take, the effort, perhaps the risk in it, something about it is something that I don't want to do, even though I know it's the answer. And you might say, well, if you don't want to do it, you don't want to do it for a reason. There's got to be logic in that. And I think that's true. I think there's logic in everything. I think the logic might come out to something, though, that I don't want to acknowledge, that maybe I'm not as strong of a person or as logical of a person or as intelligent of a person as I think I am. Because if I'm allowing myself to believe that I'm put in a situation that I know how to get out of, and the action is just a little bit scary, or it's a little bit outside my comfort zone, or it's going to take some work, some work ethic would be involved, and I choose not to do that, well, then I'm a weak person, right? I would say that's a pretty objective thing in that, assuming my assessment here is right. And I think there could be something to that. I think there is a fear. There is something that I'm trying to protect myself from when I am whining, when I am complaining, because that's what I'm mad about. I'm mad that this is acknowledging that I'm weaker than I want to be, or not as competent or capable as I want to be. I realize that somewhere in my mind, and that makes me angry. So I have to put that outward. I have to, release that anger that I have about it. And again, I guess it's somewhat of a defense mechanism, perhaps. It allows me to make pretend somebody else is the problem. It's not just me, right? I can only control what I can control. So in theory, I should control it. I shouldn't even worry about the other person, right? If there's something I could do to talk to them or resolve it, sure, do it. But assuming it's going to magically fix itself is illogical. So control what you control, do what you have to do. And my unwillingness to do that is too frustrating for me. It's too much for me to acknowledge. So, there's a few scenarios there of what might be at play, right? Why am I still complaining? Why do I still complain when it's so obvious to me it's illogical, seemingly? It seems so obvious that my calculation is off. Well, I think some of those things, one of those three things perhaps is true, and I need to figure out which one it is, or if there's another one, right? Do I believe it? Do I believe there's some cosmic justice and there actually is a benefit to me whining? I tend to think no, right? It's just not logical enough. So I don't think that passes the test. The other piece of it is just that it's a raw childish emotion, right? I am just not getting my way, and I am kind of that childish in some ways. That I have that little control of my emotions. That when that kicks in, I just react. That one I struggle with a little bit because it kind of absolves responsibility, and that's not really in line with how it's not to say it's not right, just because it challenges a theory I have, but it makes it a little tougher for me to swallow. I need to review it a little bit more because, again, the idea that I'm absolved of responsibility, there's just this raw emotion I can't control, that doesn't seem good enough either. It seems like if I recognize that, I should control it. I should recognize it's an illogical, irrational thing, and I should account for it. But that's not, something I've done historically. And I guess there's a little bit of overlap with that second one and the third one, because perhaps the reason it's out of my control is because I'm acting that way. I'm acting that childish response, but it's more because I'm protecting myself from this truth. And again, I lean towards the third one. I don't want to say with certainty, but I lean towards that because it's the most logical, right? It would explain. It's the only thing that explains to me where the math checks out, where it's like, even as a logical person who's trying to be thoughtful and reflective about this, I could see why you might still get tripped up there. Because it is protecting you from something that perhaps is very detrimental to your identity. So it would make sense that you would protect yourself from that. Now the question is, what do you do with this information? Do you bust down that wall and go in there and find out if you are the weak person you think you are? Or do you say, hey, that wall's probably there for a reason. Let me just go on whining and complaining. Probably obvious what I think my answer has to be. You bust down the wall and you figure it out. You're better off knowing, right? If I am not the person I think I am, I'd rather know it, like with anything else, any other objective truth, and then deal with it accordingly. So more to come on that, I'm sure.